on TV?
You're on TV.
That's incredible. I'm with Becky.
With the greatest show, the greatest show in the world.
This is the greatest show on earth.
Wow, keep that tape. And by the way, with what is arguably the most successful company in America today.
Well,
Can we just say that?
Even broadly than that.
Just on the trajectory it's been.
Probably not quite market cap, but in terms of getting to this market cap.
Yes, unbelievable.
Unbelievable ride.
16 days or whatever the hell.
It wasn't quite 16 days. 32 years and 16 days.
That was NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang making a surprise visit to the Squawk Set last Friday. That stock has been on a powerful run over the last year. It's up nearly 200%. Its market cap topping $3.3 trillion. Joining us right now with more on NVIDIA's bull run is Ben Reitzes. He is Melius Research, head of technology research. Ben, you say that when you reiterate your buy rating on this, you get a lot of eye rolls. What do you tell the skeptics who are doubters?
Well, this is like when Apple did the iPhone, and if you gave up on Apple in year 2 or 3 of the iPhone, you missed a lot. So this is really in the beginning. And what people, really are skeptical about is the size. And they're already a huge market cap here, but there's still room to go. And obviously, Jensen running around New York meeting investors all over the East Coast, he's got a lot of good things to say. I think that you should listen to him.
NVIDIA, you actually say, is your second cheapest stock in your group. How do you look at it on a PE basis?
Well, I look at PE to growth, and there's a ton of upside next year to our growth estimate, and revenues of 40%, but there's upside there, and there's probably not as much upside in any other stock. So I think it's trading at about 1x PE to growth for next year. And that's really attractive for a name like this, as long as the numbers are there. And if obviously if the direction is upwards to the estimates, that's really attractive still. And I think that each day you got to walk in and say, what are our checks showing us? What is the research showing us from the bottoms up? And it's still there.
Demand for Blackwell, what are you seeing in your channel checks at that point?
It's pretty huge. What the big issue was whether they could get the production up and running and get through their mask issue, and they seem to have done that, and whether they can get through the negative mix shift of scaling a new product. And I think they're going to do that pretty well within a couple quarters. And the demand looks really insane, like you said. These big clouds, you got to understand, these are huge capitalized companies. And if they're going to beat their cloud numbers that they're going to show the street, meaning Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they got to buy Blackwell, and they got to get the customers up and running, or else they're not going to beat numbers. And that's it. That's how you get the sequential acceleration to their cloud business. The companies will say a lot of different things that, it's because of how great they are in cloud, but really it's because investors run to their platform to use the latest and greatest from NVIDIA. And that's how they're going to beat, and they're going to buy a ton. And pretty excited.
What about their gross margins? There has been some concern recently about whether they could keep up the gross margins or whether they're continue to drop a little. And this is, again, from very high levels.
Yeah, that was our main concern as well. And whenever you launch a new product, and make changes to it, you have to you even write off some older inventory or inventory that's no longer useful. They had a larger write-off than usual last quarter, but we think that's going to get less and less as we go through. And what we're seeing is them moving past that gross margin issue. So what should happen is gross margins go down a little bit for a quarter or two and then turn. We see gross margins in the mid-70s, which can power close to $5 in earnings power, that they can demonstrate over the next 4 to 6 quarters.
The stock was down about 2% in the calendar third quarter. What about the fourth quarter? What makes you think that this is going to be the time that things really turn around?
Well, I think that the street this time, so last year as well, third quarter is a tough time for semis anyway. And for NVIDIA, they tend to do the market tends to really hype things up in the first half and then digest it in the second half. And this year, a lot like last year, what happens around this time is folks start to say, yeah, I know next year is great, but what about the year after, meaning 26? And I think the street this year is going to discount a little quicker that things are okay. They have that huge show in March called GTC. And we think they'll unveil the Rubin chip for 2026 there. They've already talked about it, but we'll hear more about it. And then you'll realize, oh, yeah, 2026 is a growth year, and it's a pretty big one. And the market probably discounts that a little sooner than they did last year because Jensen is obviously gaining more and more credibility, which is obvious.
And I think that, look, there's things that happen. You'll see NVIDIA's up today. Well, what NVIDIA demonstrated, and Ben Reitzes was on this morning from Melius, but I did a lot of work last week on what NVIDIA did. They did a road show. They came to New York, went to Boston, went to Baltimore. Now, this is a CEO who, if you listen to Renee Haas's excellent podcast this week, says, listen, I'm not an actor. I'm out there doing things. Now, what is he doing? I think the most important thing is that the new Blackwell chip is designed, Carl, for video. Now, video ingested is what you need if you're going to have a self-driving car. Now, there were a lot of people who didn't like what Tesla showed on Friday, but I've got to tell you, they have the technology for the self-driving car that doesn't need LiDAR. You don't have that thing spinning up at the top. You have, I know things were muted with the NVIDIA. With Tesla, but if they had talked more about NVIDIA, I think you would realize they're ahead of Waymo. Waymo's got all three are NVIDIA. You've got the brain in the car, you have the super brain, and you have a training brain. But if you have NVIDIA and Tesla, what you have is a car that knows everything. So that's why I was disappointed in the way Musk presented Tesla. I wasn't disappointed in Tesla.
Of course, Tesla shares trying to recover some of Friday's losses. We do have these reports that some of the robots serving drinks were operating with human assistance, not completely on their own. But you're right, as for NVIDIA, Ben's at 165, and he takes pains today to say that this is not Cisco circa 2000.
I thought that was amazing because it's literally in the first paragraph. Listen, it's not Cisco. The fact that he still has to keep saying it's not Cisco, that is a bleep. This is what I'm talking about, David, in the dynamism versus 2000. You have companies that are dominant. Now, you also have companies that are challenged. For instance, Waymo is Alphabet. Alphabet is challenged by the Justice Department, right?
Yes.
But have you noticed the free-flowing nature, because of NVIDIA chips, what's happening with Meta? I mean, Meta is Meta AI plus Reels, where you can give money to Zuckerberg and design your campaign. And then one of the great comeback stories is Amazon. Amazon has a so-called weak quarter. Stock goes all the way down to 161. It is now well above. Amazon is the company that Jensen kept referencing to me as being a great friend. Jassy.
Well, AWS is certainly a huge buyer of NVIDIA chips.
Right.
Along with so many others.
Now, I know that to be so is NVIDIA.
And they are still the largest cloud provider.
But to be the NVIDIA-centric is not wrong. Because I'm going back full circle to the 2-year anniversary.
Right.
And it's NVIDIA, then second is Supermicro. Now, they were added to the S&P, but that is an NVIDIA.
I knew exactly where you were going, and you're right. NVIDIA's up over 1,000% during this 2-year period. It is the top performer, as you say. Supermicro is second. And Meta, by the way, which you just mentioned as well, Carl's up 363% over a 2-year period, helping provide the fuel for this rally.
On a day where Goldman goes to 636, Meta.
Meta is, if they can get Meta AI right, and Jensen is saying, listen, don't worry, they'll get it right. I mean, this was a goodwill tour by Jensen, and I just keep thinking about the fact that he said to me, it's so easy. It's so easy to be what he's doing because he's so excited. Life is good. He comes in peace. Look at the companies that are not begging, because he told me, not begging. He says, don't worry, we'll get them. And then you're talking, Melius is talking about the next generation, the Rubin, Philadelphia zone.
The Rubin.
Yeah, the Rubin.
That's the
Not
next.
the Rubin like you get at Zingerman's in Michigan. I'm talking about the Rubin. The Rubin like a scholar and star, but it's just, it's more of a halcyon time than people realize for our technology. And I think that Ben Reitzes is kind of the leader right now. And
Guys, Apple's up, NVIDIA's up a lot.
Well, it's breakout.
NVIDIA, obviously, the great performer of the last 2 years. GE, by the way, also one of the best performers of the last 2 years. But NVIDIA number one and up another 2%.
Well, look, NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, CEO, was very funny about the last quarter. Called it the biggest miss ever. Making a joke because obviously there were a lot of people who thought the last quarter was a miss. There was a yield problem. It was hard to make Blackwell. Well, now Blackwell is scaling, and Blackwell ingests video, not just words. That's going to be the breakout, the next frontier. And I think the people who sold it were actually people who didn't know what NVIDIA was. As I call them, the NVIDIA. They're like the NVIDIA, like the hand cream. I got stopped this weekend at an Eagles game. A couple people said, so what do I do with NVIDIA? I said, I would just use it on my hands. I would not use it on my legs.
Like it's Nivea?
Yeah.
Nivea. The old Nivea. Remember that
Much
stuff.
easier to make.
It is. I mean, really.
Yeah,
Come on.
they're not selling chips.
They got some
But
other,
NVIDIA is selling them to basically everybody, including, of course, Elon Musk. In a podcast, our friend Brad Gerstner, my friend Brad Gerstner does.
Altimeter Capital?
Yeah,
The Bg2 podcast. He had Jensen Huang. That guy is everywhere.
He had the Renee Haas. He was on Renee Haas's podcast.
He was on Renee Haas's
podcast. Was he on your podcast?
Well, but this got some headlines because he talked about Musk. And remember the money that XAI took in, some
Right.
$6 billion, I think it was, something like that.
Right.
I got to go back in my notes, but for his XAI effort. And then he immediately went to building a data center in Tennessee. I mean, take a listen. Jensen's like, he got that thing up in 19 days.
Why don't we listen to this?
Take a listen.
Building a massive factory, liquid cooled, energized, permitted, in the short time that was done. I mean, that is like superhuman.
Right.
Yeah. And as far as I know, there's only one person in the world who could do that. Right. You know, I mean, Elon is singular in this understanding of engineering and construction and large systems and marshaling resources.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Interesting comments about Mr. Musk.
Well, he had very
There's so many
positive
podcasts, and they're also a video podcast.
Well, Renee Haas, this.
What are we?
tech
Are we
herd.
kind of like a video podcast?
Well, we need the mics.
We need the mics.
Well,
Yeah.
and Renee Haas, the CEO of ARM Holdings, came visited him for Tech Unheard. It's only 20 minutes. It's worth listening to.
I would definitely got to. Renee has his podcast as well. Yeah.
And Renee's got a series of people coming up who are terrific. But I will say that.
By the way, that's a nice move there.
Oh no, that's a real company doing some really amazing things. Especially, obviously moat. Oh, yeah. There's.
Was that just the other day? Was that yesterday?
Yesterday. Yeah.
With Renee.
Really?
Congratulations, by the way.
He's a Raider
Nice
fan.
to have AJ and Devontae back.
Yeah, he's very good, and we've got a coach that the whole stadium loves, and he speaks to the fans, and it's really the city of brotherly hate again. Always love that brotherly hate stuff. But Renee, that's worth listening to, and again, you'll come back and you'll say, Jensen's so far ahead of us. It's very difficult to be even on his plane. I'm not on his plane, and I'm not talking about.
You mean the plane, not the plane. The plane.
Yeah, the Spain plane. Right. Not the rain plane.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
Mainly on the plane.
Yeah, that plane.
Not the plane.
Let's get out of here.
Shares of NVIDIA up over 3%. You see it there, just inches from another record high. Seema Modi has been tracking the stock and the industry. She joins us now with some of the latest. Seema.
David, over the weekend, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang spoke with Altimeter Capital's Brad Gerstner on his podcast, Bg2. And the takeaway was that NVIDIA's software, CUDA, that chips run on, is an underappreciated asset by Wall Street. Huang also discussed the powerful role CUDA is playing in allowing GPUs to run faster and enable applications to run better. And with constant updates to its architecture, it's becoming easier to curate data.
there's a trail of free gear. There's a trail of free infrastructure behind the new infrastructure that's CUDA compatible. And so we're very disciplined about making sure that we're compatible throughout, so that everything that we leave behind will continue to be excellent. Now, we also put a lot of energy into continuously reinventing new algorithms, so that when the time comes, the Hopper architecture is 2, 3, 4 times better than when they bought it, so that infrastructure continues to be really effective.
Analysts on Wall Street making the point that once a hyperscaler is locked in with CUDA, it's much harder to switch and pivot to a cheaper alternative. A strong reaction this morning, Goldman upping its price target to $135, Melius Research reiterating its buy rating, $165 price target. Huang on the podcast also praised Elon Musk's XAI and the speed at which he's building supercomputers. He also touted the inference opportunity that he says over time will make up a larger percentage of sales. We're watching the stock now less than 1% from that all-time high.
Of course, technology did okay in part because semis. You always focus on the semis. NVIDIA now creeping higher. Let's say NVIDIA breaks and makes a new high. Do you think that creates sort of a groundswell of new buying?
Yeah, it's at a new, as of the second closing high. It's not at the intraday high, 140 and change. We've had about 80% of the move since January on that original breakout. And all I can tell you is when you have 100 to 200% sales growth, and then the CEO comes out and says demand is insane, the markets act accordingly. And so far, so good. We just bought a bunch again. So, yeah, I think it's higher. Today, they woke up the semiconductor equipment makers. That's Applied Materials, Lam Research, KLA-10 Core. I know ARM Holdings broke above resistance today. So I think, and semis have been lagging. If they get going again, that'll just fuel even more. So we're in one of those markets right now where you always look over your shoulder, because when it gets a little too easy and a little too good, you're like, when are the scare days coming? But so far, so good. And today I'm finding new names, even today, breaking out of range, which tells me the market's broadening even more.
NVIDIA, big driver, getting very close to a new record as well. Seema Modi joins us at the desk with more on this. Just plowing straight forward.
This record run. And I think it brings up this question of, on Wall Street, how long can NVIDIA's dominance last when it comes to AI chips? And the marketplace, as we know, is only getting increasingly more competitive. Here's what NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang told Altimeter Capital's Brad Gerstner on his podcast yesterday.
To me, when I think about a computer, I'm not thinking about that chip. Right. I'm thinking about this thing. That's my mental model, and all the software and all the orchestration, all the machinery that's inside. That's my computer. Right. And we're trying to build a new one every year.
Yes.
That's insane. Nobody has ever done that before. Right. We're trying to build a brand new one every single year, and every single year we deliver 2 or 3 times more performance. As a result, every single year we reduce the cost by 2 or 3 times.
Huang also dismissed the idea of NVIDIA being the next Cisco, which was at a similar position in the late 1990s and famously lost market share. He also said that computing tools, the need to curate more data, all underscore the important role NVIDIA is playing. And he does not think AI will eliminate jobs. He looked at NVIDIA, for example, which employs 32,000 employees with plans to get to 50,000 with 100 million AI assistants, which he says will increase the company's overall output. He also praised Elon Musk for the speed at which he's building a supercomputer in the span of 19 days, which he says typically takes about 3 years to plan, guys.
100 million AI assistants for the what? For the 50,000 employees that he expects?
Exactly. He's growing. He's looking to hire more people, go from 32,000 to 50,000, but coinciding with that, building out these AI assistants, which will help them run these models and launch AI applications.
Can they keep up that pace of a new offering every year? Is that sustainable?
That's the big question, right? With Blackwell, we are seeing those delays. Of course, we'll be getting earnings in November to get a better picture on the timeline and how much revenue they expect next year. But that's the timeline, is every year a new product that will be faster, cheaper, and better than some of the other alternatives. That's significant, especially when you think think about Google, Meta, Amazon, all working on their own in-house chips as well.
Well, NVIDIA also setting a record closing high today, up 2.5%, as hype around the company's AI chip demand continues to soar. Other names in the space also rallying, like ARM Holding, Marvell, ASML. Joining us now is Bernstein senior analyst Stacy Rasgon. Stacy, of course, we're going to ask you yet again a question about NVIDIA here, but trading at record highs. Comments from Jensen Huang, the CEO, over the weekend about the strength of the moat, specifically where inferencing and software is concerned. I'd imagine you still got a buy on this name, right?
Sure do. I think I've said this before. I think at this point you still have to be there. Demand is off the charts. Numbers are going up. I think that's pretty clear. And then when you got Jensen, I think on your channel, talking about insane demand, I mean, they're going to be selling everything that they can make. Yeah, I think you have to be there.
Okay. We've also got more proxies into, or bellwethers, I should say, into this AI semi read when we get ASML and Taiwan Semi earnings later this week. How much do those matter here?
I think they'll matter. I mean, although I don't anticipate anything on the AI side as being unusual. The other proxies everybody watches for is like when the hyperscalers report the CapEx outlooks and those sorts of things. So just general signs that demand is strong and that customers are continuing to adopt. And again, everything we can see, at least at this point, suggests that's still a clear runway. It's clearly still happening.
Stacy, anything catch your eye about the difference in the trajectories of AMD and NVIDIA just over the last few sessions? We just had Lisa Su on last week after we had Jensen on overtime the week before. And really, NVIDIA has continued to surge since his insane demand comment. But really, it was kind of a sell the news-ish reaction to AMD's news.
So AMD had their event last week, and they announced their next generation part. It's called the MI325. It's basically the MI300 with more memory, which is fine. And they showed some benchmarks on it versus NVIDIA's what they call their Hopper, their H100 part, their current version. And AMD was sort of suggesting it was superior. And you always have to be a little careful with those self-reported benchmarks, but fine. The issue though is that Hopper was introduced a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, and you got Blackwell, which is NVIDIA's next generation part, which is coming imminently. And I mean, it's going to blow the doors off of anything that's out there. And by the time by the time that AMD has something out that you could even argue was even partially competitive with Blackwell, which is the MI350, it's probably the end of next year. Like by then, we'll all be getting ready for NVIDIA's next generation part. Long story short, the gap between when NVIDIA is introducing capabilities, when AMD is introducing them, it's still pretty wide. It's at least a year, maybe longer. And that's just on the chip side. That ignores everything else around software and systems and ecosystem and everything else that you need to get broad adoption. And so I think that's why you saw the sell the news with the AMD event. It wasn't like it was a bad event. It was fine. It was good. It's good that they're putting it up, but compared to what they're fighting against, it's tough, right? It's NVIDIA's game to lose at this point. They're not showing any signs of losing it.
Now, at the same time, NVIDIA is trading, more than 10 times the market cap of an AMD. So, if AMD does pretty well, I wonder, when's the last time we saw a moment like this where so many of the chip players are making more of a platform argument up front? You really have to think more about software. You have to think more about these systems. Lisa Su, AMD just made this acquisition, intending to make this acquisition of ZT in that direction. You can't just think about what are the performance metrics on this newest chip, right?
And that's absolutely true. It's not like anybody can sort of cherry pick specific examples where you're better or worse than anybody else. But it really does come down to ecosystem and adoption. And again, like you can given the capabilities that NVIDIA has put in place, I mean, you can buy their stuff and you're up and running in days. And with a lot of their competitors' stuff, it could be weeks or months to get everything up and running properly. And like, time is money in this industry, so it absolutely matters. And you ask like whether other companies have like talked about this. I'd say software and ecosystem have been increasingly important pieces of semiconductor sales for a long time. And I mean, everybody sort of looked back at the days with Intel and Microsoft. They formed what was called the Wintel ecosystem that was pretty dominant in its days for a long time. It's starting to crack now, but these sorts of things, once they get established, they can last for a long time. And today the ecosystem of choice is NVIDIA. So everybody else is trying to push into there.
You're talking about Wintel like it's a civil war, making me feel like I got some miles on me. Stacy Rasgon, thank you.
All right, I hope you're all doing great today. The S&P finished the day up about 0.8%, and NVIDIA had a fantastic day, finishing up about 2.4% today. This is after NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang appeared in an episode of the Bg2 Podcast that was published yesterday. I have not listened to the entire episode yet, but I did listen to a decent portion of the episode, and I'll just cut straight to the chase. NVIDIA has so much more room to grow. It is truly mind-boggling. If you've been wondering how much further NVIDIA has to run, or what the company's future growth prospects will look like, I encourage you to listen to this episode of the Bg2 Podcast, because Jensen provides such clarity on the situation. I posted a link to that podcast in a community post, so feel free to check that out after this video. What really stood out to me was hearing Jensen explain the insanely massive moat that NVIDIA has right now. And this is such an important concept to grasp when it comes to NVIDIA and semiconductors as a whole. NVIDIA does not have to worry about competition right now, not at all. Even if a company comes out with a GPU that is faster than NVIDIA's, it really does not matter. Jensen spoke to this specifically and basically said, look, if a company develops a chip with more flops, that's great, but that's only one component of a massive flywheel across the entire stack. And NVIDIA is developing across the entire stack. It's not just about a chip anymore. It's the GPUs, the CPUs, the networking, the cooling, the algorithms, the mounds of software, and so on. And this is an important point. Even if a competitor develops a chip that rivals NVIDIA's, that competitor would be nowhere close to NVIDIA's competitive advantage, because the chip is just one single component of the entire system. And even if someone has a fast chip than NVIDIA, they don't have the competitive advantage NVIDIA has when it comes to the software, algorithms, and program libraries that NVIDIA has developed. NVIDIA has created industry-specific algorithms for each industry, and you could think of NVIDIA as the connecting link between the hardware underneath and all of the AI-powered applications built on top of that. Without NVIDIA serving as the connecting link, it just doesn't work well. Without a doubt, NVIDIA has a massive moat that no competitor is going to be able to breach anytime soon. So NVIDIA does not have to worry at all about competitors. It's just that simple. And so considering NVIDIA's competitive moat, considering their holistic approach across the entire stack, both hardware and software, considering that NVIDIA is seeing insane demand for their products, and considering that this company is developing a new generation of product every single year, I think it's safe to say that this is nowhere near finished yet. NVIDIA still has a massive runway of growth ahead of it. I've been saying for a while now that it would not surprise me if NVIDIA doubles over the next 2 years given NVIDIA's current growth trajectory and upcoming product cycles. And I am now even more confident in saying that after having listened to Jensen on the Bg2 podcast. And with that long-term perspective in mind, I also want to address the short-term situation regarding NVIDIA and the rest of the market. As I've been saying for a while now, I'm cautious about adding to positions in this market until we get to November 1st because of what happened back in 2016 and 2020. Back then, the market moved lower in mid to late October, reaching a relative low on the Friday before the election. This year, that would be November 1st. Back in 2020, the market moved higher in the first half of October before moving lower in the second half. So that is worth bearing in mind as the market has moved higher so far this month. And I'll be honest, I am genuinely surprised by how strong the market has been holding up so far this month. But I'm still cautious until November 1st just in case. If the market were to trade higher in the second half of October, that would be a deviation from the norm. It is possible, but it would definitely be unusual. So I'm still cautious just in case, and we will have to wait and see how this plays out. Now, once we get to the actual week of the election, I think NVIDIA and the rest of the market are likely to start trading higher. And this is assuming that nothing unexpected is happening in the world at that time. Back in 2016 and 2020, the market started trading higher during the actual week of the election and rallied into year-end. Additionally, I think that NVIDIA is especially likely to trade higher in November as we get closer to NVIDIA's next earnings report. This is because of Micron's great earnings they reported recently, and also because Blackwell is already starting to ship out to customers. We have confirmation from both OpenAI and Microsoft that they have started receiving shipments of Blackwell. This is a very big deal because at NVIDIA's last earnings conference call, we were told that Blackwell would start shipping in Q4. And here we are still in NVIDIA's fiscal third quarter, and we have confirmation from multiple NVIDIA customers that they are receiving shipments of Blackwell. This means NVIDIA is likely further along in the production of Blackwell than they guided for at their last earnings conference call. We should start to see some actual Blackwell revenue on the books at NVIDIA's next earnings report. And if NVIDIA is ahead in their production ramp of Blackwell, then that also means they are likely to guide Q4 Blackwell revenue higher than what they guided at their last earnings report. With all of this in mind, I seriously think we could see NVIDIA trade higher in November as we get closer to NVIDIA's next earnings report. Again, I don't know what to expect in the short term between now and November 1st because of the pattern the market followed back in 2016 and 2020. But once we get to the actual week of the election, I think stocks, and especially NVIDIA, are set up for a move higher into year-end as long as nothing unexpected happens. While I don't know what will happen in the short term because anything could happen, I am bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA, and I would not be surprised if this company doubles over the next 2 years. At least that's how I view the situation. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.